The pass, the dunk, the block. Wash had an incredible final 2 minutes against NC State. Can he keep it up?
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Monday, January 13th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast. It's the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making us your first listen or watch. And I want to send a special shout out to all the everydayers, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord channel, and of course, our great insiders. Welcome in. Let's get right after it. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and redeem code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on the show today, we're going to get into talking about the win over NC State on Saturday over in Raleigh. Obviously, we did a lot of that in our postcast, so we're going to go a little more big picture, but we'll also talk some specifics. We'll have our Four Corners recap. With some rules explanations. Woo, that sounds sexy, right? Yes. Our shady stat of the game, where we're going to laugh at NC State a little bit for their ineptitude. Our weekend whip around. But we got to start by talking about our guy, Jalen Washington. With all due respect to Ian Jackson, who just continues to be on fire. Jalen Washington in this game, 11 points, 12 rebounds, 6 of them offensive, 4 of 6 from the field, 3 of 4 from the free throw line, and 3 blocks in 27 minutes. Let's take stock of that because there was a lot of firsts for this man. Second highest point total this season for him. Career high in rebounds, meaning also that it's his first career double-double. Career high in offensive rebounds. His previous high was 4 at Georgia Tech last season. This was a career high by 3 seconds in minutes played. He played 26-36 in that game a couple seasons ago against Virginia, where he was thrust in because of the Armando Bacot injury. This game, 26-39, a season high for, a career high for Jalen Washington, I should say. I mean, obviously it's a season high as well, but lots of first. And with this game, you take that sum total and it's like, man, that is great. But what really stands out, what really set it apart was Jalen Washington's closing 2 minutes. That's what stood out. NC State has just reeled off a 12-2 spurt to turn a 9-point deficit into a 1-point lead with 2.5 minutes to go. And it's looking like, here we go again. The home team, the opponent, whoever it is this season, has climbed back over the hump, and they're going to win this one. And then Jalen Washington went to work. There were 3 specific moments: the pass, the dunk, and the block. And I want to unpack them for you because they were so critical. The pass. The next, just a little bit later, there's about 2 minutes to go. There's 10 minutes on the shot clock. RJ Davis is running the point. Elliot's on the bench at this point. With 10 seconds on the shot clock, Wash comes up to screen for RJ Davis. Jaden Taylor's guarding RJ. Ben Middlebrooks is on Wash. They both go with RJ. So Wash slips a little bit just inside the free throw line. RJ finds him. He's wide open, but immediately after him slipping it, here comes Dontrez Styles, and here comes whoever was in Hill, who was guarding on not Ian, Drake. It was Drake Powell. Yes. And so let me remind you again of the context of this moment, though. Carolina has just been on the wrong side of a scoring run, and someone needs to step up. Someone needs to be the guy. And it would be tempting in this moment for Wash to say, all right, I got to take this shot for the team. I'm pretty wide open, even though I got these 2 guys closing on me. But the game's starting to slow down for Jalen Washington, and he's processing it very well. Seeing how open he is, yes, Styles and Hill come sprinting at him to stop the shot, leaving, kind of sillily, Ian Jackson wide open just outside the 3-point line in front of the Carolina bench, and Drake Powell a little bit open on the baseline. Wash sees Ian out of his peripheral as Styles has inexplicably left him all alone on the wing. And so Wash, instead of taking a shot that would have been a fine shot, he finds Ian Jackson, the most explosive offensive player, the most effective offensive player on this team right now, for a wide open three that he drains and puts Carolina back up to with right at 2 minutes to go. So I guess when I said 2 minutes, it was like 2:10 when that action started. And I mean, when I'm saying wide open, when Wash passes to Ian, by the time Ian catches the ball, Dontrez Styles still has both feet in the lane because he had crashed so hard to cut off Wash. Mistake from NC State. He should not have helped off Ian. What should have happened is only Hill should have helped off of Drake Powell while still keeping Drake at bay. Mistake. Carolina takes advantage. Brilliant decision from Jalen Washington to pass to Ian Jackson. Carolina takes the lead. Each team has a couple missed opportunities. And now Elliot Cadeau's back in the game. And this, we move from the pass to the dunk. There's a couple screens up top. Jalen Washington sets a screen for RJ, then switches over, sets one for Ian. Or good grief, Isaac. He sets one for RJ, and then he sets one for Elliot Cadeau. All right, you with me? Sorry, I'm all over the place there. They both start cutting. Elliot reverses course a little bit. Might have just pushed off a little bit on O'Connell. But it leads to this mismatch where now Middlebrooks is on Elliot Cadeau and O'Connell is on Jalen Washington, in part to a very nice seal from Wash, who turns inside, seals, and now has O'Connell on his back and just has the rim wide open. Problem is, can Elliot Cadeau get him the ball past Middlebrooks? But Washington ever so wisely comes across the lane down to the baseline where O'Connell, for some reason, just starts to play defense behind Middlebrooks, like on Elliot, not realizing what Wash is doing behind him, making himself available. Elliot twists and turns, gets this ball awkwardly over his head to Jalen Washington, who promptly turns and dunks. Doesn't, we've been like, dude, you got to go strong, right? And he does. No dribbling, nothing. It's great. And maybe Elliot picked up his pivot foot. I don't know. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's the final points of this game, this dunk, because Jalen Washington not only went up, set good screens, had a nice seal, but made himself available for his point guard to find him, dunk 63-61. And let's not just take a dunk for granted, right? How often have we bemoaned a very specific missed dunk in the Sweet 16 last year, right? Yes. So there's the pass, the dunk, and now, the block. After Styles dances all over creation before getting the ball in, we'll talk about that more in a minute, he does get it in. Elliot Cadeau is at first defending O'Connell, who hands off to Jaden Taylor coming around the side over the top. Elliot and RJ switch, so now Elliot is switched on to Taylor, and it looks like Taylor has a step on him, and if you go back and watch, the lane is wide open at that point, so it's up to Elliot. But what you don't realize is that Wash is lurking down by the baseline. He's got Middlebrooks behind him. And what Elliot does is he catches back up into the play, slides his feet, stays vertical, and kind of walls off Taylor enough that it's got to be a little bit more of a difficult shot. It also creates enough space where Wash sees it coming, rotates over to help, and because of that distance has enough chance to get his arm swung and swat the shot. Now, it is a little bit of a risk because there's enough time on the clock that if he misses it and the shot rebounds to the other side, Middlebrooks is all alone. RJ tries to slide down, but he's a little bit too late, and Middlebrooks either has a tip dunk or a pretty easy putback as time expires. But Wash gets this game-sealing block, and it's beautiful. And then he just stands there defiantly. The ball rebounds off of Drake Powell back to Jae'lyn, and that's it. Man, perfect. This is what he has to be. The pass, brilliant. Thoughtful, mindful. It's a great basketball play. The dunk, the block, all of it. This is what we need from Jalen Washington all the time. But he has to recognize it. He has to own it. Last couple games, we're starting to see more of that. There's been a little back and forth, some strong moments, some weak moments. We need own it, Wash, always and all the time. And he's proved it's not just like against American, whom he scored a season high 18 points against. One of his better games of the season was at Kansas. He can do it against high level competition. It's in him. And what I'd love to see consistently from Wash is like 8 to 12 points, 6 to 10 rebounds, and a block, average a block. That would be great. And then just doing all the other little things that don't show up in a box score as well. Wash needs to be a factor that other teams have to consider in their game plan. He needs to force teams to think about him when they come into the lane. He needs to force Coach Davis to play him 20 to 25 minutes a game. And those blocks, I mean, yes, we want him to just alter people's shots just by recognizing he's there. And teams are now going to have to start paying attention to that, because in just the last 3 games alone, Jalen Washington has 12 blocks after having 9 in the first 14 games, 12 in the last 3. He's got 21 total this season. He had 21 all of last season in 20 more games. Now, sure, he's playing double the minutes he was last year per game, but again, has done it in 20 fewer games. And even taking tempo and minutes out of the equation, his block percentage is up from last year as well. He's averaging 1.2 blocks a game. He's averaging 4 blocks in his last 3 games. And prior to this 3-game stretch, Jalen Washington had eclipsed 2 blocks just once in his career. That was last season at Virginia. He had 4, meaning 3 of his 4 highest single game block totals ever are the last 3 games. Jalen Washington is moving. He's coming up. So why is all of this important? Well, because the guards, the backcourt, that's in place. They're capable. They're highly capable, particularly with the emergence of Ian. The backcourt is so dangerous. The Tar Heels will have a backcourt advantage in almost every game they play. If only Cade Tyson was rolling. Good night. I can't imagine what that would mean. So Carolina, because of all that, because the backcourt is so good and dynamic, they just need a serviceable front court to match it, and they can be successful as a team. On Saturday, Wash was more than serviceable, and that's what's hopeful. And the other good news is that there are a couple guys behind Wash that surely someone else can provide enough minutes to back him up. So let's say Wash can average 25 minutes a game. Then that means you just need 15 other minutes at the 5 position to finish a 40-minute game. Van Allen Lubin could handle 10 to 12 of that. Needs to be more solid than he was Saturday for sure, but in a backup role, whatever. That means if 25 for Wash, let's say 10 to 12 for Van Allen Lubin, then that means the combination of Jalen Withers, Ty Claude, and James Brown just need to combine for 3 to 5 minutes a game to cover that. That's very doable. Now, Wash isn't going to play 25, but if you slide it every game, but if you slide it down to 20, that just bumps the others up just slightly. Just need Wash for 20 to 25 minutes a game to do what he did on Saturday. Man, I'm encouraged by it, but the consistency has to be there. That's key, and that's critical. That is what this is all contingent on. Carolina's ceiling is raised or lowered by the consistency of Jalen Washington doing more of what he just did. Well, on Saturday, there were some missed calls and misunderstood non-calls at the end of the game. Plus, Carolina almost chokes away another lead. Well, we'll unpack that all coming up in our Four Corners recap in just a second. Right after I tell you about TurboTax. Look, taxes used to be dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back at all. Well, now taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology with cross-checks, which cross-checks, by the way, millions of data points for 100% accuracy. And while they work on your taxes, what's neat is you get real-time updates on the progress. And you get the most money back guaranteed, all while you go about your day. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now, this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. Sorry about you, green text messengers. And see guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Carolina beats NC State on Saturday, 63-61. They are now 11-6. Overall, 4-1 in ACC play, up to 29th in the net on Sunday morning. We get now into our Four Corners recap, and we start with the ending sequence because there's a couple other things. Yes, we just talked about it with Wash, but there's a couple other things I do want to unpack about it. Number one, it's always fun when NC State gets hurt about stuff, and they're like, oh, Well, apparently Kevin Keats, after this game, was, quote, disappointed the officials didn't review the final play of the game for goaltending, end quote. First off, no, it was not goaltending. Second, would you like to know why NC State is so bad? Their head coach doesn't know the rules of his own sport. Would you like to know why the referees did not review for goaltending? Because in college basketball, you can only review for goaltending if goaltending is called in the midst of the play. If goaltending is the call made on the floor, you can go review goaltending. But you know what? There was no goaltending call, so you can't go review it. So Kevin Keats, when you say you're disappointed that the officials didn't go review it, I'm disappointed in you for not knowing the rules of your own sport. No wonder NC State's not good. Come on, man. What are we talking about? I also want to clear something up. Before that play, before the block, there was the whole Dontrez Styles. We talked about this on the postcast. We noticed it kind of in real time where JC Fox and some others had mentioned, it looked like Dontrez traveled on the inbound of that final play leading to the Jalen Washington block. And I tweeted about it and said, hey, I screenshot of a little video of it of him dancing around. And I called it traveling. Like he should have been whistled for traveling. I don't know how the refs missed it. And think back on it later. Like I was just trying to do that in a hurry, get it up so it could be out there and people could see it. I should have been more precise with my language. I called it a travel, yes, but that's not actually correct in that moment. So I need to apologize because I used the wrong language. It's in the rule about it and why it's not traveling is a rule that I'm guessing a lot of people don't actually know. So I want to clear that up. In the NCAA men's basketball rule book, it's Rule 7, Article 8. At point A, it says the designated spot, which is what happens after a made shot. You can run the baseline. That's great. But in others, it's a spot throw in, and the referee designates the spot, and you got to stay there, sort of. The designated spot is the location at which a thrower in is presented disposal of the ball out of bounds. B, the designated spot shall be 3 feet wide, not with no depth limitations. Meaning, I'm going to give you this spot, but it's 3 total feet wide, basically like 1.5 feet on either side if you're thinking about it that way. No depth limitation, so you can step back. C, the thrower in must keep 1 foot on or over the designated spot until the ball is released. Hear this. Pivot foot restrictions and the traveling rule are not in effect for a throw-in. To make sense of all that, you can move your feet like Dontrez Styles was doing. I think a lot of people assume you got to establish a pivot foot just like you would, and that's what a spot is, and you got to kind of dance around. Not true. You can move your feet, and you've got 3 feet at discretion of the referee and as much depth as you need. You can move back because, again, you are not subject to the traveling rule, and there are no pivot restrictions. Interesting. So again, this was not a quote-unquote travel like I called it on social media. However, while it's not a travel, it seems very clear and obvious to me that Dontrez Styles violated the 3-foot width of the designated spot where he's supposed to keep 1 foot on or over that designated spot that's 3 feet wide. I mean, he pretty clearly moves at least 5 feet to his right. That's got to be called. So again, I just wanted to explain that rule. It's not traveling, but he has violated the designated spot, thus should have been still a turnover. But you know what? That led to the Jaylen Washington block and heroics, so we'll take it. Also, by the way, I'm pretty sure Elliot traveled on just before his final pass. If you go back and watch it, he has established his pivot foot. He picks it up, puts it down. That's a travel before he throws it to J-Wash. So we'll take it. And to be honest, there's a whole bunch of calls both ways that were poor, either calls or non-calls. So whatever. Number 2 in the Four Corners recap. Carolina has got to figure out how to push out these leads instead of letting teams back in. And the key for me, every possession has to matter. meaning you've got to make the right play at the right time in the right place, whatever that is, every single possession on offense and on defense. Carolina, at 2 points in the second half, held a 9-point lead. In both those occasions, NC State went on a run to take their own lead back. So Carolina led 29-20 just inside the second half. NC State goes on a 16-6 run to take a 36-35 lead. Later, Carolina is up 56-47 with just under 6 minutes to go, 5:53. And you're like, okay, just keep pushing this out. Double-digit win, nice and easy, and let's get out of here. Not so much. Over the next 3.5 minutes, NC State goes on a 12-2 run. So it turns a 9-point Carolina lead with just under 6 to go into an NC State 1-point lead with 2.5 minutes to go. And multiple of in the stretch of that, so much of it is because of either mental or physical state mistakes by Carolina. So Ian Jackson extends it to that 9-point lead on a 3. O'Connell gets a couple free throws, fine, whatever. Back-to-back turnovers by Elliot Cadeau lead to a run-out layup. And then transition free throws. Now it's down to 3. And to be fair, there were some potential fouls on both that weren't called. I even noticed something I hadn't seen at all yet. Elliot, on playing defense one time on O'Connell just slaps him in the face or pokes him in the face. No call. Whatever. Anyway, right after that, it goes down to 3. RJ gets a layup, sends it back to 5. O'Connell gets a mid-range back to 3. And after that, Carolina comes back down, and RJ Davis, uncharacteristically, this is the third error, the first mental error, though, pulls a pretty quick trigger 3 from right in front of Carolina's bench. It's one of those shots that you can get at any time that he didn't need. Carolina needed to work the ball and find a better shot, and RJ missed that one, in my opinion. That leads to a Hill layup 7 seconds in. So, a missed 3 leads to kind of a run out. Now the lead's down to 1. Carolina takes timeout. Coming out of it, RJ finds Ian backdoor. It's a beautiful look, but Ian either hurries it or is a little too awkward angled. And instead of just a bunny layup, he just misses it, bounces off the backboard to the other side. Hill gets a mid-range, and now NC State has this lead, and you're in potential big-time trouble. That was 3.5 minutes of game time, and Carolina goes from up 9 to down 1, and you see how just a few bad decisions, either mentally or physically, can flip it like this. Every possession has to matter. Carolina has to get better in that and at extending leads. Four Corners recap number 3, free throws. This is weird, man. Carolina only took 8 and only made 4, so both sides of that are odd. Carolina shooting just 50% is crazy. Now, part of that, though, is because of the small sample size of just 8 free throws. This was by double the fewest free throw attempts of the season for Carolina. The previous low was 16. In fact, this is the fewest attempts in a game in the last 2 seasons for Carolina. Got to go back to Hubert Davis's second season to find anything smaller. Carolina had a game in each of Coach Davis's first 2 years where they attempted just 3 free throws. So this number, though, is tied for the second lowest number of the Hubert Davis era, 8 free throw attempts. And here's the other side of it. We already said only 4 makes, only 8 attempts, 0 attempts from the guards. The all 8 attempts came from 3 front court players. RJ Davis, no free throw attempts. Elliot Cadeau, no free throw attempts. Ian Jackson, no free throw attempts. Seth Trimble, 0, zip, nada. Some of that is, I thought the refs were letting a little too much go. You do have to respond to that. I get it. But Carolina's got to be able to get to the rim because that's where so much of their scoring punch comes from, is living at the line. Got to get better back at that. And then fourth in our Four Corners recap, the rotation might be tightening up a little bit. There were just 8 players that played in this game. The starters, Elliot Cadeau, RJ Davis, Ian Jackson, Drake Powell, Jalen Washington, plus Seth Trimble, Van Allen Lubin, and Jalen Withers. But for Jalen Withers, he only played 4 minutes, and all of those were in the first half. That's basically like what James Brown has been doing lately. Speaking of James Brown, he did not play. Ty Claude did not play. Cade Tyson did not play. Second game in a row for Cade. And consequently, the turnout is Carolina has just 8 bench points in this game. That's the first time this season that Carolina has had single-digit bench points. They've had double-digit bench scoring in literally every game before this one. It was also the lowest percentage of points coming from the bench, 12.7. Another number that was the lowest of the season is bench's playing time. 21% of all available minutes went to the bench. That is the lowest percentage this season. That's even lower than the 3 games where Seth was out and the Tar Heels were down a critical piece of their puzzle. So really interesting to see with the rotation. Like, was that just a one-off because it's at NC State? We'll find out more about that as Cal comes to town Wednesday, as Stanford comes to town Saturday. But it is worth keeping an eye on. It's kind of that time of the season where if you haven't earned your way into the rotation, you might be on the outside looking in. All right, well, coming up, we got to get to the shady stat of the game. We're just going to have a little fun at NC State's expense. Yay! A little bit of a look ahead and, of course, the weekend whip around, all coming up in just a second. Hey, right after I tell you about game time, man, attending the new 12-team college football playoff is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I've heard from people that went and, man, just absolutely loved it, especially the campus games in the first round. Just anytime you have these opportunities, it's so worth taking. And one of the great things available to you is Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, that makes getting tickets for your favorite event even easier. It filters out all the fluff so you just see the very best stuff that you can buy. Recently, I used Game Time Picks to find tickets for my family to go see Dude Perfect. And when I did that, man, it was a breeze. It was easy to use. And it really was the best available price I could find at some great seats. I love seeing our seats right there in the app, man. It's a great and easy thing to be able to look at. If you want to go to Carolina versus Cal Wednesday night, 2 nights from now, there's some cheap tickets. You can get in the door from Game Time, $10. It goes up from there, obviously, but you can get in for $10. That ain't bad. That's like Starbucks and a half, right? Save your money. Go to the game. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Oh, it's time for the shady stat of the game. And it's kind of funny because the shady stat of the game is just the all-time series between North Carolina and North Carolina State, because the Tar Heels have more than double the number of wins that NC State does. It's 167 now to 81 all-time in favor of the Heels. Carolina winning, remember last time they played, NC State won in the ACC championship game. Frustrating. But Carolina winning means that they have denied NC State yet another opportunity to get back-to-back wins. And the reason I say that is because the last time they did was January 26th and February 25th of the 02-03 season. It's been over 2 decades since NC State had back-to-back wins against the Tar Heels. We'll take it. This was the 46th meeting since State had those back-to-back wins. And in that stretch, Carolina is 39-7 against the Wolfpack. That includes a 13-game winning streak in there from like 07 to 2012. Crazy, crazy stuff, and worth celebrating. Just beating up on the Wolfpack. And I say beating up. This wasn't a big-time win, and it was an ugly game, but it's another dub. We'll take it. Just a couple other quick things. Ian Jackson has now surpassed RJ Davis for the most threes made this season, and done it while shooting over 40%. It's crazy. Speaking of RJ, he crossed over 500 assists on Saturday. He is now one of just 13 Tar Heels to do so in their career. Really cool stuff from RJ. Again, just filling out this team. Even though his three-point shot isn't going down at the rate we're used to, he's helping in other ways. All right, a little bit of a look ahead, because now Carolina is sitting on a 3-game winning streak. Notre Dame, SMU, and NC State. And they have a chance now. This is kind of crazy. I didn't think about this till I started looking at the schedule. This is tied for Carolina's longest winning streak this season, just because of all of those high-level games in Carolina not really winning any of them. Their longest winning streak is 3, meaning against Cal, on Wednesday night, the Tar Heels have a chance to set a new season-long winning streak with 4. Crazy. And also now we're at the end of this road stretch. Remember, Carolina hosted Georgia Tech in the standalone ACC game back in early December. But in the main chunk, the remaining 19 games, 3 out of Carolina's first 4 were on the road. Very similar to last year where Carolina had the first 3 of that chunk on the road. Schedule makers not doing any favors to the Tar Heels other than the fact that we're now past it. And in those 3 road games, Carolina went 2-1. You'd love to go 3-0. But Carolina getting at least 2 of those road wins is big time. And now they're 4-1 in ACC play and feeling pretty good about where things are at. Standings wise, a lot to continue to work on in terms of team growth. And that's fine. That's what you want to see throughout a season. So good on Carolina for doing that. And now the reward is that you get quite a few home games coming your way here. So hosting Cal Wednesday, hosting Stanford Saturday, at Wake next Tuesday, and then hosting Boston College after that. So really, from being at home against SMU last Tuesday on January 7th, all the way through hosting Boston College on Saturday, January 25th, that's wonderful. That's so many weeks at home, and your only 2 road games in there are at State and at Wake. So Carolina is kind of getting some nice reward now for being on the road so much. Nice little look ahead. And I mean, realistically, when you look at this, you feel good about a bunch of those wins, and you need that because, I mean, Carolina should be able to go 4-0 in this next stretch. And you need that because the next games after that, the 4-game stretch is at Clemson. At Pitt, at Duke, versus Pitt, at Clemson. That's going to be a tough 4-game stretch. And then you turn around and go to Syracuse that next Saturday. So more travel coming. That's why you got to keep getting these wins everywhere you can. All right, weekend whip around really quick, and then we'll get out of here for this Monday edition of the show. Women's basketball, you'll recall, knocked off Duke on Thursday evening, almost choked it away after a crazy third quarter where they let Duke ultimately come back late and then in the fourth quarter, but they win in overtime 53-46. Followed up on Sunday, knocking off Boston College at home 80-67. The ladies are now 15-3 overall, 3-2 in ACC play. Alyssa Utsby led the way against BC with 17 points, but shocker, no double-double. That feels like she's like a walking Armando Bacot double-double, am I right? Renaya Kelly, Lainey Grant, also in double figures for the Tar Heels, 14 and 12 respectively. Lainey Grant, man, so young, and she's doing really well. It's great to see. Boston College actually had a 3-point lead at halftime of this game, but Carolina did work in the third, 23-12, and then just took it on home. Wrestling kicked off the ACC action on Friday night against Virginia Tech, number 8 in the nation at home, and they beat them 20-17. We'll absolutely take that. That's a massive win for the 25th ranked Heels. 5 different Tar Heels won their matches. Really good stuff there. Swimming and diving kind of continue on their season. They hosted Duke on Friday night, so the night after the Tar Heels the women's basketball team played Duke. So did swimming and diving, sweeping them on Friday. The men win 211.5 to 80.5, and then the women win 178 to 114. Great stuff for swimming and diving. Gymnastics and women's tennis opened their season this weekend. Unfortunately, gymnastics lost at Alabama on Friday, 195.225 to 197.025. Silver lining, it's the highest season opening road score in program history. So that's encouraging, and we'll see where the Tar Heels go from here. Women's tennis had 2 matches actually on Sunday, hosted James Madison and then Campbell. Swept them both, 7-0 in both matches. Most importantly, great to have Reese Brantmeyer back after losing her early last season and never getting her back. It's crazy. Carolina on the day in both matches combined dropped just 1 set in singles. And in the Campbell match, no fighting Campbell won more than 3 games, and that was only 1 singles player. So really good stuff to just open the season, get rolling, get your sea legs under you a little bit, and a lot more is ahead for women's tennis. Great to be back together on this Monday. Thanks so much for joining us to unpack the NC State victory a little further. We'll have much more coming up this week, leading to Cal on Wednesday, and then we'll eventually get ready for Stanford on Saturday with those new schools coming over to Chapel Hill. If you haven't subscribed to the show on YouTube, please do so right now. Just hit that YouTube subscribe button really quickly. Helps get you notified anytime shows drop, we're going live, whatever it is, and also helps us achieve what we're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers in our first 3 years on YouTube. We're getting so close, and we got about a month and a half. We're down under 400 left. We need like 390 more to subscribe. So if you haven't done it, would you do it? That would be great. Thank you so much. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, we'd love to have you there. It's a great community of Tar Heels who just are passionate and love to hang out and talk. Links in the show notes for that, absolutely free. And then there's also Locked On Tar Heels Insiders, where you get direct access to me and a bunch of other perks as well. That link is in the show notes. We'd love to have you as part of that group. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.